Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our FLD student ministry training today. It's a privilege to be together, and we're thankful to have experienced youth ministry leader Leneita Fix. She's done a lot of training over the years. She lives in West Palm Beach, Florida, which we wish all of you were there, or we all could be there. And we're thankful Leneita has done training for us in Stevens Point. And I think one of the things that we've enjoyed about having her was her ability with all of her experience, just kind of from an outside perspective, give us all input into our ministries. And so thankful for all of you that have joined us and those that will be joining via the tape that we are going to be recording. And so welcome to all of you that are on and those that will be joining us. Let me open in a word of prayer. God, thanks for this morning. Thank you for the opportunity we have, God, to love you. Thank you that you loved us first and sent your son for us. And because of that, we can have eternal life. God, we look forward to being with you in heaven. I pray that this time together would be encouraging during this difficult time. I'm thankful that the story of Jesus, you being in the boat with the disciples as things were crazy, you could help us not to fear, but get to the other side. And we look forward to getting to the other side. And then ministry continues as you met a demon-possessed man. So, God, we don't know what you have planned in this time, but thank you for this opportunity to be together this morning. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Mm-hmm. Well, what I'd like to do, and I don't normally do this, but I just want each of you that are on right now to quick do a 15-second, I hardly ever do this, but tell us who you are and where you're from, just so we get a little bit of an idea this morning of where everyone's at. And then if you would just give me one, this is going to take 15 seconds each of you. So tell us one challenge you've got in youth ministry right now. And I'll call out the person and have you share your quick name and where you're at and one challenge. And so just unmute yourself when I call on you. Ryan Groshek, let's start with you.
Groshek. Oop. I'll unmute myself. There you go.
I got you.
So I'm Ryan Groshek. I'm in Green Bay, Wisconsin, center of the former Packers. I guess we're not playing anymore. So, and I've been there. What were the questions I was?
Yeah, just a name, where you're from, and a challenge quick in this time.
So Green Bay, and a challenge we're facing is how to connect with kids who are who have not yet engaged with us online. Is how do we find the kids who are kind of the outside edges of our ministry.
Brian Schley.
Hey, Brian Schley, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Current dilemma is ultimately feeling like the is starting to lose speed. So how do we either stop that or ultimately pick up a little bit of momentum before we hit summer?
Okay, Bo Perkins.
And Bo, I'm also from Manitowoc. I'm at Hope Church. Brian's at Faith. Same thing. Trying to find ways to be creative is really difficult, and as a result of lack of creativity, I'm losing some kids.
Deb Johnston.
Good morning, Richland Center, Wisconsin, and I just echo the same.
Tony Nord.
Tony Nord, Rice Lake, Wisconsin, and for us, we were just about to hire a children's pastor, so that got put on hold a little bit. That's a little bit of a challenge right now.
Jessica Lipton.
Jessica Leptine from Highland Community Church in Wausau. And right now we've noticed our weekly videos are just less views. So I think we're competing with the warmer weather and families getting outside.
Jared Stichter.
Hey, Jared Stichter, Highland Community Church, Wausau. We are probably dealing, so obviously Jessica and I have the same issue in some regard, but I think the biggest thing we're dealing with now is Zoom fatigue is real, and so is the mental health issues. And so, and combining that with leaders who are used to, this would be our first week without youth group normally. So now our leaders are mentally checking out as well, and we still have 100 kids showing up on a Zoom call ready to be ministered to. So.
Leif Erickson.
Sorry, guys. I am Leif Erickson, Blackhawk Church, Madison, Wisconsin. biggest challenges right now are what we're going to do for virtual ministry this summer or other kind of ministry this summer. And yeah, I got a job hold situation as well, just put on pause indefinitely. Sounds like it might be a while before we can.
JD Elgin.
JD Elgin with Houma, Wisconsin, west of Oshkosh. Our probably two current struggles, as Jared mentioned, whatever we do moving forward is going to be more intense for our volunteers, not less. And so that's a big, it's hard for me as a leader to ask more of them. And also, I have been having issue with getting honesty out of those teens who like to run away quickly. It's easy for them to hide virtually, and even if you can reach them, everything's okay. So that's difficult for me.
Kurt Vanderstelt.
Kurt Vanderstelt, Half Moon Bay, California. And my greatest challenge is my own aloneness. Everything you've mentioned is true of my students, but myself, I didn't move to California to be this alone. I moved here to interact with kids, and so my own mental, emotional, spiritual health is on notice.
That is definitely one of my biggest concern, is the health of all of our leaders, honestly, and even the pace of which everyone is going right now. And we don't want to admit it, but after we're done, are we going to have any gas in the tank left to keep going? It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. Luke Zika.
Sorry, didn't know if you were unmuting me. I'm Luke. I'm from High Point Church in Madison, Wisconsin. And yeah, it's for us, it's the morale among the leaders has been my biggest challenge. I got some leaders out of work and people are just really tired of it. So we have our little youth group huddle. And when morale feels that low in the call, it's hard for us then to have a bunch of students come in and put on something that's helpful for them. So that's been my biggest challenge.
I know one leader that is basically fired 3 of his leaders because they weren't willing to do Zoom or connect with students. So there's a reality. Anybody else fire leaders?
I fired 1 leader.
Anyway, that's unique. Ryan Jinks.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ryan. I'm at Terrace Shores Church in Markesan, Wisconsin. And my biggest challenge today is hiding the bodies of my kids in the backyard, maybe digging some holes.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll leave it at that.
The church drone should help with that.
Are you talking about your own personal children that live in your house, or like?
Yes. Yeah. My wife and I think she got the shovels out, and so there might be 3 crosses in our backyard.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I have all my college-age children living back with me. Yeah. We'll just leave it there. So.
We didn't sign up for homeschooling, that's for sure, many of us. Tirza.
Hey, Tirza Drager from Crossroads Church in Pittsville. Biggest struggle right now is when COVID-19 hit, we decided to combine junior and senior high. So I have twice the students that I'm trying to reach than I did previous to this. And yeah, everyone's just so sick of technology. My kids are itching to get outside and hang out together.
Makes sense. Scott Gulkey.
Hi, Scott Gulkey, in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, at Harvest Church. I think the biggest struggle is what everybody else is saying, just keeping students engaged online. I think it's wearing them out. They're sick of Zoom. My own kids are sick of Zoom and don't want to be on anymore. So just trying to figure out how to best engage with them this summer.
Alex Eunice.
Alex Eunice at Park Hills in Freeport, Illinois. We're a wannabe FLD. My biggest challenge is getting my small group leaders to step up and be small group leaders, be disciple makers. Some of them have kind of used the opportunity to check out, like some of you guys have mentioned. So trying to disciple them to disciple others has been a challenge.
Kirsten. Are you there? How about Shante?
Good morning. I am Shantae, and we are from Graceway in Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin. I'm actually originally from California. I have my video off because I have really tiny kids, and right now they're watching a movie, but just in case they get crazy, I don't want to be too distracting. One of the things that we're facing is we had an interim coordinator for our church for a little bit, and then he left right before this hit. And we've just kind of came together as a team to volunteer together as leaders to run the whole thing. And our church isn't really high on the high end of technology to do Zoom calls and all that. So it's been really challenging. I mean, we have been able to text I work with the high school girls, and I've texted them, but it's been challenging having small children and just not receiving text messages back. And then a lot of people are the same way. They don't want to be on technology, and it's, there's not a lot of stuff that we can do together 6 feet apart. And I feel like I'd like to get creative with that and still be able to do games or something like that where we can get everybody in the same place and just out of the house together. But I also don't want to get everybody in trouble, but be respectful of all the parents that are scared that, their kids are going to get sick or their families. And so, yeah, all of that is super challenging.
Thanks, Shante. Let me just say this to you. Feel free to put your email address. I'd love if you want to connect with you and help in any way we can. Well, that was a quick overview. I'm going to have everybody mute themselves if you haven't again. And so we're going to jump into our training. I thought it would give us some context as we got started, just to hear what is the biggest challenge you're facing. I'm sure there are a lot. And Kirsten, thanks for, she is Zooming from home, but she's got some poor internet. So anyway, she's with Jared and Jessica. And so she's working on, she says, with good weather for families to sit down and do online programming. And they're all zoomed out, she said. So that's our last. Thank you, Kirsten. So what I want to do is turn it over to Leneita. I don't think I need to really give you an introduction other than just to say you've been around a while in student ministries. And I was thrilled a few years ago as many of you have heard, I was mowing my grass and I heard this D6 podcast, and Leneita's probably sick of me saying this, but heard this gal talking on there, and I'm like, wow, she gave just a ton of good information. And I'm like, I'm going to try to email her. And it was amazing because she emailed me right back. And I'm like, wow. And so we were able to ask her to come to Point and do some training for us. We also asked her to come to districts, and we've been very fortunate. I know Scott Galkey's had her come and share at districts during our seminars, and her husband came also. And I thought it'd just be good. I know one of the things coming out of that training in Point, Leneita, you mentioned that it seemed like one of the biggest needs that all of us have, and it was brought up in this conversation, was how do you train your leaders to be leaders? And working through that in lieu of even the craziness of where we're at. And so I want to give Leneita about 20 minutes to just give us some training, and however you want to hand that. And then after that, we're going to spend about 10 minutes talking about what the future might look like. And then we'll end with about 15 minutes of Q&A from all of you. I hope that sounds good. So Leneita, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. All right. So I am here in sunny West Palm Beach, Florida. I have almost begun to believe fake news because of how poorly Florida has been presented to the rest of the world. We are still on lockdown. I literally go between my house and my office every day. I see the same 7 people every day. You know, you get attacked going into Target if you're not wearing a mask. So it's very funny because I was coaching a guy last week that was like, well, you're in Florida, you can do anything. And I was like, no, I really wish that was a real truth. But I think it kind of brings us to where we are as a nation. I think that the example that I keep using, and I think this is what I was talking to Rob about a little bit today as we kind of get into what do we do next and what are our biggest challenges, are a couple of things. So I think what happened to us is this. As a nation, we kind of started hearing about coronavirus, but we'd had other things come through. We'd had Zika, we'd had swine flu. We'd had different things that were like this. We were like, it'll be bad. We'll deal with it. Nobody anticipated a global pandemic, you know, and I know that's redundant to say global pandemic, but I like putting it that way because nobody anticipated the entire world going on lockdown within a month. Like literally that's what happened, is that all of a sudden, so it's not like we had time to catch up. It's not like, and I think we entered into it like we often enter into tragedies. We'd entered into it in this kind of rush of force in a very reactionary way. And we did that in ministry in a very, very reactionary way. And so the example that I keep using is, it's like we packed to go on an overnight trip, and then, you know, it became the bad movie that went sideways and you got stuck there. And there comes a point where you've got 3 pieces of clothing and you're living out of a hotel room and you've got to make a decision because you just can't get home. So we're kind of at that point now where maybe we're not building a house or deciding we're going to stay in our vacation spot, but we do have to like rent out an Airbnb, get a hold of a washing machine, and like acknowledge where we're at. So I tell you that to say that I think we kind of have to acknowledge where we are first and how we got here before we can really look at what to do next, because we landed here. And I think a lot of us, what we did is we reacted to this, and what we wanted to do was create great programming for the kids. We wanted to give them stuff to do. Oh no, now you're stuck at home. We want to give them stuff. And for any of you who have seen my Gen Z stuff, you know, it's very funny. I was saying this to Rob, and before everybody else came on, I would get in these youth pastor forums and everybody was surprised that students didn't want to connect online. And it was like, there were a couple of things that just keep coming up, but they love technology. But do they love technology? Every statistic shows that Gen Z prefers face-to-face communication over any other type of communication. Everyone thinks that they love Instagram and they love Snapchat. They love to present themselves to the world through social media. But if they really want to have a heart-to-heart with you, they want to be face-to-face with you. They're actually an extremely distrusting generation. The second thing is a friend of mine put it this way: watching technology and interacting with technology are 2 different things. So we went from a very spectator, we went from providing them a mechanism where they were interacting with each other, we were forcing them to a spectator sport. That's what we provided them with because we didn't know what else to do. And so and then a lot of you just said it this morning, and I think it's true. Now they all have Zoom fatigue. Everybody all of a sudden blew up. I mean, there wasn't anything. The zoo had something for free. The other thing that I do for a living, so I run like youth leadership stuff, and then I also run a marine science organization. So we've been doing free online marine science education, and the numbers have gone down, and we're probably going to stop it next week because the schools have to require, just so you know, for elementary school, the requirement for across the country has to be 4 hours of education, whether they require you to do 4 hours of education at home for it to count for the school year. So, and for junior high through high school, it has to be 5 hours. So they're providing online teaching and online interaction. And, you know, even my daughter, because she's allowed to come with me. So she's my videographer for marine science every day. So she's a senior this year. And so my marine vet was like, oh, you don't really have anything to do. And she finishes up next week. She has 3 AP tests, and she kind of stared at him. She was like, I'm doing 7 hours worth of work every day. Because and so we've got all of these things together, and I'm kind of throwing this all in my, quick 20 minutes, because I think what we have to do first is acknowledge the new normal. I think we've been waiting to get home. We've been living out of the suitcase. We've been, trying to figure things out and, wearing the same dirty clothes, and we're going, why isn't it working? And so instead, what we need to do is we need to really kind of anticipate some new normal things. I was doing some coaching with a youth pastor just yesterday who asked me, he said, do you think it's being proactive or reactionary to plan virtual things for the summer and to really plan on doing very small group things for the summer? And I said, I really believe that that's proactive. That's not reactionary. I think the reality is for us as a world, somebody touched on being sensitive to the parents. I think the reality is for us as a world, even if the world opens up soon, we're not rushing back into being able to be in large groups and being comfortable with that. So I know even there are parts of Florida that have opened up restaurants, but it's patio seating and you're still watching. I drove to that part of Florida to visit a friend yesterday, and you know, the restaurants were not full. People were still using takeout. You know, there were like 2 people sitting on the patio. Like it's not, we're not rushing back into that world. And so I think especially for those of you who have staffing issues and now have taken on more work with Children's Church and you're now responsible for K through 12 or even, you know, 5th grade through 12th grade, the reality is that that they're not going to be rushing back into the large groups. What do we do? So what I want to talk about I've kind of given you the background a little bit, and I want to give you some ideas on some things that I think we can do. I think the difficulty of us right now and the way that we have to be creative, I love that Kurt just said, we're all waiting to get home from the disaster. That's exactly, you know, that's exactly what it is. You know, somebody said yesterday, I feel like I'm in the 5th, you know, the 5th level of Jumanji. And I was like, no, we're in the 2nd Hunger Games movie. We just had the Tracker Jacks come through with the murder hornets, you know? And like, I feel like every dystopian movie, like we're in the prequel of all dystopian movies right now. You know, like when it's like 100 years and they're like, we remember when, we're in the remember when. Like that's where we are like right now. Like, so the Tracker Jacks have already happened and now we're in the quarter quell. That's what I feel like right now. So like, I just, you can tell I've had a lot of teenagers in my house through the years. So the reality is, what do we do with the new normal? And I think what the first thing that we have to do is the creativity that we have to figure out is not with programming, but with connection. So the first thing that I would say is that where our heartbeat really to figure out heartbeat wise is what is how do we connect to students? And I think in that, something that I think we're going to have to do going into the summer and readjust for the fall is in the summer, we're going to need to focus on the students that want to be with us. And that's that goes against everything in who we are as youth people. Because in who we are as youth people, even if we're the disciple, I've said for years, I feel like you're either an evangelist that happens to be a discipler or a discipler that happens to be an evangelist. And what I mean by that is it's typically our heartbeat and approach to ministry. The evangelists like the large groups, they want to preach the gospel. I call it bombing the gospel. You want to bomb the gospel and you hope it hits somebody, the shrapnel gets somebody, you know, and then you hand off your discipleship to other people. If you're the discipleship model, it's all about going deeper, going deeper, going deeper. And then, you know, you want to see kids go deep. As kids go deeper, you want to see them come into a relationship with Christ. So it seems like what I'm saying is completely counterintuitive to who we are as youth people. But I experienced this just myself in the past week. I run a leadership group, and the entire focus of the group is about growing really solid servant leaders. And then the idea behind it is to teach them how to then go reach their friends and do things. And it's for a local Christian high school. And we're one of 3 leadership groups on campus. And I had 3 students that basically came to me in the last week and said, you know, we've decided that we're going to quit this group and go over to student government. Student government is a lot more like pep rallies and things like that. And, you know, my pride was hurt. My pride was like, for those of you who were like, oh, the kids aren't showing up anymore. And they were the kids, honestly, who weren't showing up for any of the Zoom calls anyway. So my pride was hurt. And then my husband said, he goes, he's like, why are you so hurt? Because they weren't ever engaging anyway, and you felt like they were dead weight. It's like, I know, but you know, you want everybody to think you're the most awesome and join your group. So like, that's what you want. So, you know, that's the humanness in all of us. But I will tell you, so we had a meeting yesterday, and so I went to them and just very gently said, we're going to move into some stuff for the summer. We're going to be inviting some new people in for the summer that are going to be joining the group. Thank you for your service. Like, you've applied for this other thing. Like, it was a very nice, not so blunt, don't show up anymore, like type of thing. And so I will tell you, and this is why I say we need to focus on the students who want to be with you. The air was lighter with the group of students that came. It was a completely different group. They were more engaged. They shared more. They had more ideas. They were more interactive. And it's because they all knew that, because nobody's going to call anybody else out. You know, nobody's going to be the snitch. But they all knew that they were now with a group that wanted to be there. And so, and I'm not talking personality wise. I'm not saying that their personalities. I have one quirky freshman that you know, the guy who talked about the backyard. Yeah, it's kind of how I feel about him sometimes. So, you know, I'm just waiting for him to be a senior. I'm probably going to like him when he's a senior. You know, we all have that kid that you're like, in about 3 years, you're going to be awesome. So, but he wants to be there. And so the reality is, I do think in our creativity, kind of going back to what I was talking about, and I've got like, and I can send this out, I've just got a couple of talking points that I'm going to go through. I think the first thing that I want to touch on is the idea of heartbeat, and the heartbeat of your students, and the heartbeat of who wants to be there, and the heartbeat of why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that we need to shift from creative programming to creative connection. Kurt was sharing when he came on that he's been writing handwritten letters to his students. That's a brilliant idea. And when I say creative connection, I'm a huge advocate for what is creative connection for your personality and the personality of your leaders. I think one of the reasons why some of our leaders are not engaging is because we're asking them to do something that's counterintuitive to them, and it feels disconnecting. Because here's the thing about a Zoom call, and it's even difficult right now. We have to have everybody on mute so that there's not background noise. But what happens is that we're having a Brady Bunch conversation every time. So I've got all of your squares. I can't read everybody's facial expression. And if we were in a room around a table, I can read the room. I can read the facial expression. There can be side conversations. You can make little quirky comments, and you may be doing that to each other in private chat right now, but we can't read the room. And I think that's why so many of our leaders are struggling, is that this fatigue that they're talking about going online, is it never feels successful. You don't feel like you're coming out of the room, out of a Zoom meeting very often going, that was great. You're feeling like I said everything that I wanted to say, or a couple of kids made some great comments, but I think it's harder to read the room. And then I think the second thing that's coming out in focusing on the students that want to be there, focusing on the heartbeat of connection. And then the other thing is on the other thing that really is happening with us personally, when we were talking about us being drained, is, I don't know if it's happened to you, but according to Facebook and all social media, all of the other youth pastors are doing awesome. They have all of the kids showing up. They have the best Zoom games. I will not mention certain groups, but certain groups, oh my gosh, it's the best Zoom game. Oh, I had 900 students show up, and we did the best scavenger hunt in the entire universe. So if you have like 3 kids that showed up and they stared at you for an hour, you're like, did I really do anything? And so I think that's something that we really have to do for ourselves and our own mental being. And I think that kind of going back to those of you who are feeling drained, that's the other thing. When you're thinking creative connection, not creative programming, then the other thing that is really going to happen for you is don't compare yourself to other people, other youth groups, what they're doing, and you're able to do the thing that gives you energy. And that's the other way that you're going to get leaders involved, is we need to give them freedom to do some things in a way that will give them energy. And so somebody put up that the BBC article on why Zoom is draining is really, really helpful. Definitely read those articles, because you come out at the end of the day and you're just like, I know I feel it when I teach the marine science classes. I'm yelling at the camera. I'm trying to be exciting. I've got some kid who's like, well, the shark isn't big enough. Well, I'm sorry that we only have a little shark in our aquarium. Like, great whites cannot even live in an aquarium. So, I'm sorry my shark isn't exciting enough for you, and so, and that kind of hits you, and it's just draining. And so I think the other thing is, and Kurt hit on it with the letters, students, they want what they've always wanted. They want you to be vulnerable. They want you to be you. They want to connect with people who care about them. I texted, because I was annoyed last week, a bunch of students and was like, hey, how are you doing? And my subversive was like, why haven't you shown up? But I did the right you thing and was like, hey, how are you guys doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. I had 5 students that were like, oh my gosh, you care about me. Like, it means so much that you reached out and asked me how I am. It was a huge light switch for me. That was like, oh my gosh, I've stopped doing the thing that is the heartbeat of who I really am. I've stopped reaching out to kids and finding out how they are and connecting with them in the way that they are. All right, I want to talk to you just in the last 10, 15 minutes before we get to the Q&A portion. I'm going to share the screen, which is some ideas that I had on some different things that I think can kind of help as we get into this new normal, and help you with the students that you're working with. Okay, so the first thing we just talked about a lot was the heartbeat, the idea of connecting. The other question you have to ask yourself as the leader is, why are you meeting? What is the purpose of your meeting? And I think that will help your leaders a lot. And that's where I was talking about when I was making the joke about being in the dystopian novel. What are they always trying to do in that? They're just trying to get out. They're just trying to survive. We have to get to the end of the third Hunger Games movie, for them. We love how it ends, if you've read Hunger Games, because they end up married. And even though the world isn't fixed, they have a new life. And so I think what we've been going into is this idea of programming. I know I have, and it has to be back, why are you meeting? What is the purpose? So for example, one of the things I'm starting this summer is a meeting for seniors that's getting ready for college. And so it's all the practical things. And what we're doing is we're saying it's 6 weeks, and you can come all 6 weeks, or you can come we've given them 6 topics that we're going to hit on each week. So one week is how to navigate friends. One is how to find a church. One is big school versus small school. One is how to manage your finances at school. So we're going to have probably a handful of kids that come all 6 weeks, and then we're going to have some that just show up for the 1 or 2 things that they care about. But it's very clear why they're meeting. And one of the things that we're doing in that we're being creative with, this is where it's nice that Zoom is an easier way to connect with leaders, is that you can get people who don't have to leave their house. You don't even really have to wear pants. That can, I loved your Facebook, Rob, that you wore non-stretchy pants for the first time in a month, a week ago. So, if you watch the Some Good News with John Krasinski, he wears jams, every time. So, but my point is that what we're doing is getting different experts in different things. So we're going to get a finance person just for the finance week. We're getting, like, you can get people that would be those people that may not make a 6 or 8 week commitment, but would show up to one thing. I need you for an hour. I just need you to like sign on for an hour. And those are the things that you can do. So when you're trying to recruit leaders, and I would say this as you're going into the new normal, I forgot to say this. I think the new normal proactively, at least for the summer, has to be navigating small group mentality. I've been an advocate for a long time of, I think that we've been doing large group youth group because it's the way it's always been done. And I've been an advocate for a long time that, especially with this Gen Z, that they connect in small groups. They connect. Somebody talked about the kids who are hiding. They can hide even more now with technology. That's a whole other training for a whole other day on this generation is a generation in hiding. Technology just gave them an excuse. I literally have to spend the entire time going, I'm going to unmute you. What do you think? Oh, wait, while you have thoughts, and then making them like talk to me. So I think that we do have to be creative when we talk about the creative and connection. In the programming, we have to think through small group type of things. So somebody talked about getting outside. It has to be the creative connection in, okay, it's got to be less than 10 people. And we have to stop worrying for right now, just for the summer, on who can't come. Invite 12, expect 5, and do it in a method that is really sensitive and protective of families who are feeling, like don't go smush, into a 15-passenger van, like now is no longer the time to do that. Okay, we're going to meet at this park and we're going to set up a picnic where everybody brings their own picnic blanket, and we're going to sit across from each other and talk, things like that. But I think it has to be small, but I think we also, when we get leaders together, we also have to talk about how long is the commitment. You have to be really clear about that. Then you have to be clear about what is you have to think this through. What is your expectation? And you have to think this through in your own heart, and then when you're presenting it to leaders. So what is your expectation of this time? We're meeting together and we're just hanging out. My expectation of this time is just for us to talk. My expectation of this time is for us to do a Bible study. My expectation, and you're going to, with leaders, have to be really, really specific. I want you to follow this curriculum. I want you to teach the kids how to garden. I want you to have an interactive type of thing. I do think this is what I would say in the connecting point. Try to tap into different passions of your leaders. And then with the Zoom fatigue, have short things that might be opportunities for kids who have different interests to jump in. So I know one youth leader who did Bob Ross painting with students. So they put on, they screen shared a Bob Ross, painting his happy little trees. And then they all had canvases and they all painted happy little trees, And so I think that's the other thing. This is something for you. And it's one of the things why I think us as youth leaders have fatigue. What is going to be difficult or exciting for you to let go? We have done things the same way for so long. It's hard for us to let anything go. And now so many of us have so many more expectations than ever before. We're doing, going, moving. We feel guilty. Here's the thing. When a student falls out from coming to physical youth group, it takes a couple weeks. You go, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Rob in a couple of weeks. It is distracting, and it has a lot to do with that that idea of the Zoom fatigue. When a kid jumps off the meeting, when somebody jumps off the meeting, you're distracted. You're like, what? Everything starts going through your head of why did they leave? And so we're internalizing it as youth people. Why are they not showing up? Why are they not leaving? I don't think them not interacting with you has anything to do with you. I don't think it has anything to do with us at all. I think it has to do with They're over being online. And I think that they want normal back. They want routine back. They want to understand. You have so many students that were super involved in competitive options, travel, sports, competitive theater. All of those things have ended, and nobody knows when that's starting again. Nobody even knows how to make it happen. My husband and I coach cross country, so we're trying to heavily recruit all kids to run cross country, because you can run all of the time. But the kid who loves soccer, competitive soccer, is not going to join cross country. They are grieving a lot right now, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't know how to navigate it, and they don't know what to do. And let's be honest, we're grieving a lot. We're grieving that things aren't the way that we want them to be. We're grieving that we can't play to our strengths. We're grieving that we always have to play to our weakness. We're grieving that we have to fire leaders. Some of you have had, it's not just that you couldn't hire new people. Some of you have had to make cuts, and that's painful. It's painful to do. Some of us got the PPP loan, some of us didn't, and some of us were at churches that didn't want to apply for it, and it's a painful time for everybody. So I think that one of the things I would just encourage all of you, it is, to quote Good Will Hunting, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that they're not showing up. It's not because you're not exciting enough. It's not because they don't like you enough. I don't think it has anything to do with us at all. And I'm going to just give you some context, and then I'll run through the rest of the list really, really quickly. My daughter is a senior in high school. I'm going to run a list of everything that she's lost in the last quarter. Last prom, last time seeing friends, last class, last day of school. As her parents, this is our final kid graduating from high school. My husband and I had an ugly cry last night because he said nobody wants to talk about how much we've lost. We're so busy supporting all of our kids. This is our last kid. Oh my gosh, this is our last kid. Now, we are extremely blessed that her school has guaranteed some manner. It's going to be in June. It's going to be a month late, but it's going to be some manner of weird social distancing graduation. So they're at least going to have a physical graduation. But a lot of your students didn't even have a graduation, or they had a virtual graduation. And I'd love to share it with you if you want to see it. She happens to be valedictorian of her class. And her valedictorian speech that she showed me yesterday is about allowing yourself to grieve. That's what her entire speech is about. She says to her classmates, I'm not saying that we need to wallow in complaining, but if we don't, she literally says, if we don't allow ourselves to be disappointed, we'll never move on. There's a Judah and the Lion song called I'm Okay. It's become my family anthem because the whole song is about I'm okay, stop asking me. And at the end he says, maybe it's okay to not be okay. And that's become my daughter's anthem. And I tell you this to say that there's been a lot of loss, but what you're seeing in your students, and I know I kind of got hung up on this other side thing, what you're seeing in your students in this grieving process is, how do you grieve when the entire world has lost more than you have? How do you grieve when it's a pandemic this is what I keep hearing from student after student after student. Well, what do I do? There's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is. How do you grieve, and how do you grieve when you still have family members? My cousin lost her sister-in-law to cancer this week. She's like, we traveled, we're not telling people, but we did travel to the funeral. I don't know if we did the right thing. And I was like, you did the right thing. You needed to go be with family, but we've kind of so hyper-focused on this pandemic. Family members still have cancer. Your kids have family members who have lost jobs, parents who have lost jobs. They are struggling. We're back to that 2008 hurt that we had in the recession, and they don't know what to do with any of it. And you know what? We don't know what to do with any of it either. And I just tell you that to say you have a group of students who are grieving, but the way that they're presenting it is the way that Gen Z always presents it. I'm going to pretend like I don't care. I'm going to hide my emotions. I'm going to hide who I am. And it is excruciating to get my daughter to admit what she's feeling. That speech was probably the deepest I've gotten out of her because, well, Mom, I have friends who have lost jobs and you and Dad still have a job. Well, Mom, I have friends who have lost grandparents to COVID and Grammy and Grumpy are still okay. Like, how can I grieve when people have lost more than I have? And so I went over on this and I'm going to kind of go through the last, I always have too many points. It's kind of how I always teach. But, you know, I'm going to kind of run through. You have to also sit down and make for your, I wanted to hyper focus on that because you are who you are. And there are some things that you've been doing for a long time that you needed to probably delegate a long time ago, but you feel guilty about it. And I wanted to kind of make the point on how it's not about you, because what you need to do next is you need to make a list of everything that you're doing currently, like a physical list. And then what you need to do is go through that list. And the first thing that you have to circle on the list are all of the things that your pastor makes you do that you cannot let go. You can't delegate. And I want you to say everything that you're doing, being a parent, being a spouse, making food for your neighbor, you know, if we want to run the Enneagrams, you know, the number 2 is just making food for everybody. So like, you know, all of the things that you're doing. But the first thing you want to circle is what are the things you absolutely can't let go. Then you want to go back through the list and you want to go through what are the things that give you energy. That's the next thing. What are the things on this list that genuinely give me energy? The third thing, and you want to stick a little star next to that. Then the third thing you want to look at on your list of everything that you're doing right now is, you know, what absolutely are you not allowed to let go of? What are the things that you that give you energy? Those are the top 2 things that you want to look at, and you want to start on this thing. And then the third thing on your list that you want to go back through and start are, you know, what are the things that you know you need to be doing? So the first one are the requirements. The second thing is I know I need to. And that's harder, but you need to really look at your heart. Everything else that's left on your list, you should be delegating. And then what you're going to do, and this is the hard thing, what can you delegate and what can you drop? If you've got 3 kids showing up to the Zoom call that's about, you know, the Bob Ross painting, I know we all feel guilty, but it's the starfish story. You know, it matters to that one, you know, the guy that's throwing the starfish back into the ocean. We've all heard the analogy, but the 3 kids, it's okay. It's okay if you're running 6 Zoom meetings a day and you need to let go the Bob Ross painting if you can't find anybody to delegate, you know, to. We talked a little bit about this. What's your new normal and for how long? You know, start putting markers for yourself. Okay, we are going to just plan on small groups through the summer. And then we're going to reevaluate at the end of the summer. I know for our church, my husband's on staff with a very large multi-site church. They're looking at, hopefully, if we open up allowing in-person small groups by July, they're not even planning on even entertaining us going back into church until after Labor Day, like as a large group. And I know that's like, oh my gosh, it's so long away, but the reality is you can then plan when you have milestones for the new normal. We talked about this. What is the passion and the needs of the students? Do a survey. What are your students passionate about? Not what programming do you want, but what would you be passionate about? Because you might have kids who show up for a cooking class or a painting class or a discipleship class or a marine science class. You might have kids who do that. The thing that you need to let your leaders know is what is your expectation on attendance? Your leaders are feeling fatigued because if 2 kids show up, they think they've done something wrong. I'm hoping somebody shows up. You know, come back to me if you're only getting 3 per week. You know, and I know I'm giving these like umbrella, huge umbrella statements and I'm kind of bombing you with a lot of thoughts, and your pastors may be asking something more of you than all of this, which means you need to go back to your pastors and kind of have deep conversations about, here's what I'm seeing, what can I do? How do you want me to make this? And then the final thing is, the final two things are to have checkpoint times, and then, you know, kind of the final things are, you know, help your leaders know how to handle disappointment. I had somebody say to me a long time ago, those of us that went into youth ministry, whether you're bivocational or you're, you know, or you're a volunteer. And so, but the person, like, it's your heartbeat, it's your main heartbeat. There are a lot of things that are intuitive to you. There are a lot of things about being leaders that are not, that you're volunteers, or it's not intuitive to them in youth ministry. And so you're going to need to teach them how to handle this disappointment when their students don't show up. And I think we may need to go through a little bit of time, like what Kurt's doing, that we don't expect things in return. That we mail out letters, and we may not hear back from them, but it doesn't mean that they don't care about the letters. It doesn't mean that they don't care about the text message that says, how are you doing? You know, it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. It just means that they were already a consumer generation. And now in the last month and a half, we've created more of a consumer generation. Show up and watch this class. Show up and get ready for your AP test. Show up and do this thing. And I kind of will finish with this. I do think we need to be creative specifically for the summer, because a couple things are not happening this summer. That families aren't traveling. You know, I have a couple of students that typically, I have a couple of like students that I work with that typically I wouldn't have seen them all summer because of travel sports or because of their family like travels the world and does elaborate vacations. They're going nowhere this summer. And they've got extreme Zoom fatigue, but they also don't know what they want to do now. Like, they're ready for school to end in the next week or two. But they're like, when I talk to students and I'm like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know, you know? And so I do think I've got lots of creative ideas, but again, it's creative ideas for connections. So like Rob said, we kind of have 10 minutes left. He wanted to kind of end at that, you know, end in an hour. I want to be sensitive to that because, you know, he's got 19 Zoom meetings today. He probably isn't even going to sleep. He's just going to be Zooming, like, you know, in his sleep. No, but if you guys have questions, you know, you can either raise your hand or type them in the chat and Rob will unmute you, or I'll just keep talking at you. So.
Leneita, you had given us a teaser. You said your summer focus should be and your fall focus should be, but you never finished your idea for fall.
Okay.
So would you just touch on what you think when we reopen, what the fall could look like?
So I think you're going to need to have a checkpoint time, and it's going to need to be like pretty far out from when your fall would be. So for some of us, school starts in August. For some of us, you know, for some of us, it starts in September. So for different people, you have different things where the fall would start. So like somebody said, Facebook corporate offices, Kurt, you said this, you know, they're near you. They're not even doing face-to-face meetings till June. So I think it's fair for most of us to expect that probably the largest group you're going to be able to have together at the beginning of the school year is 50. I think we're not running out into the world, you know, and having 200 again. So I think where it might not be 10, I think it's going to have to be a both and. I think we're going to have to, this is my complete opinion on things, okay? My opinion would be in the fall to plan once a month, small, like 50-person focused, and this is going to be different from different places and different policies and things like that. It will be plan different like, this is going to be a worship night, this is going to be this is going to be a game night, this is going to be whatever it is. And you're going to have to, like, we don't even know if game nights will ever be able to happen. We're not even allowed to play 3-on-3 basketball here. We can go to the basketball court. It's very exciting right now, but nobody can show up and actually play. You're playing horse by yourself is what you can do at the basketball court currently, so you're going to have to reevaluate those type of things. But I think planning on a once a month, like in-face type of larger group gathering, or planning on kind of some elaborate logistical plans of getting people face-to-face in very small groups, and like planning on that smaller is better in person, and then what can you do online, continued, going to a both and focus. And then it's going to mean to be that we reevaluate, like at another, all right, so we're gonna evaluate in June, and we're gonna plan on this till November. We have those natural time stops in our ministry career anyway. So we're going to plan on this through Thanksgiving, and then we're going to evaluate, and we're going to try to do this after Christmas. And it would have been that natural time stop. So somebody asked the question, do I keep going with planned discipleship, content, teaching, or do I focus on the COVID situation? Can you talk about the balance between intentionality, not focusing on it, and focusing on it? I think that we all have COVID fatigue. We all got very excited about murder hornets because at least, they're just out, killing bumblebees, because we were like, oh my gosh, I don't have to read pandemic statistics anymore. My husband about 3 weeks in was like, you are overinformed. Stop. I'm like, hiding your phone from you. You are not allowed to read. Because I was like, every day I was like, and the statistics today is, he was like, stop. But I think our students live in this weird, almost like Alice in Wonderland place of, it feels like they've gone through the looking glass, but they don't know what to do with it. So I think it's okay, to kind of acknowledge, to students, we're still in a pandemic. It has not gone away, but at the same time, focus on what we care about. What do we care about? We care about teaching them how to follow Christ. I think one of the best things that happened right now is that The Chosen came out. If you haven't watched it, I'm going to say something that should not be recorded. I really don't like Christian movies. I'm sorry for all of you who love them. Never watching the Jeremy Camp movie. I know, I'm sorry. I really feel bad for his current wife. They're really focusing on that, but I usually don't like them. But what I love about The Chosen, if you haven't watched it, I know many of you have probably watched clips. If you haven't sat down and watched it, is that it's taking time to walk through the life of Christ, and they're going to take as many seasons as they can fund. And so it's a marker for us. It reminded me what matters is following Jesus. What matters are those touch points of following Jesus. And so I think when you talk about that discipleship thing, it's just like if you had a student in your group whose father is dying, you're not going to focus on that the entirety of their life. It's still part of who they are, but you're going to focus on kind of the underlying heart condition. So that's kind of, I don't know, I think that's kind of what I found, is that I got tired of being like, how are you guys? We're in a pandemic, and them just staring at me because they don't know how to feel. And so I just reshifted to, all right, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Because James 1 says, when we face trials of many kinds. This is another one, so what are we doing? So that's, I think that, somebody brought up the point of, a policy change that you've already had to make is the gathering restrictions and not school district closures. I think typically we followed the schools, and we may have to change that. I know even locally, some of the private schools are kind of, they're talking about going a half-day online focused school here next year, and then a half-day in person, and this weird busing, it just is a nightmare. And so some of the private schools that have smaller classes where they've always gone with what the district does, they're already talking about doing things differently. By Kurt. So, so I think that, I think that's a really good point too. We are at an hour. I am willing to stay and answer more questions, but I want to be sensitive to your time.
Sure. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to close this time. And if some want to hang on for a little bit after this, I want to keep it to an hour. But first of all, thank you, Leneita, for joining us. You can see, it's just as we're dialoguing, there's a lot going on, a lot of thought process going on with everything. And so thank you for your time today. Thanks for everybody showing up. You guys have a great day. I'm going to turn off record at this point, and then those that want to stick around can do that.
And Rob has my email, so if you guys want to email me, I'd love to keep talking because I know sometimes people just need to process.